Next, we're going to invite Bronwyn Purvis, if you'd like to join me up here. Bronwyn is a film and theatre maker working quite close in Burnie and most recently, and as a director and producer. Bronwyn is our most recent recipient of the Kirk Robson Award this year for 2010. Please make her feel welcome.
Thank you. I grew up in northern New South Wales, in Grafton, and after finishing my Year 12's exams, the weekend after, I caught the XPT to Sydney. I decided I wasn't going to live in a country town until I was retired. I thought that the only stuff of value would be found in the cities. I was highly ambitious, and I knew I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to make art and somehow incorporate my social justice ideals. My first professional job offer in the industry was regional. And at 20, I found myself on my first gig, packed in a car, travelling up to northern New South Wales to run filmmaking workshops for Big Art's Not a Clone project. So I've learnt a lot from when I was 18 in terms of where the opportunities are and where you can make the work you want to make. I'm passionate about inclusive practices. I'm passionate about experimenting with how we can use the arts to shift social issues, and all the opportunities that went my way came from the regions. Of course, I insisted I was based in Sydney for at least the first 5 years of that. I would come into country towns and do short-term projects and feel like a celebrity. The local media wanted to know my story, and everyone was just overwhelmed that I'd come from the city. In 2004, I moved to the northwest coast of Tasmania, just for 6 months, just for a pilot project called Radio Holiday. I was lucky enough to be surrounded by a community and a project and artists and colleagues that made me feel that that made me reassess really what it meant to make work in the regions, and that I could perhaps be an artist of value nationally whilst living in Burnie. In terms of what drives me, and what keeps me making my work, it's probably come from my upbringing in a country area and from my family, and the passion in terms of people with disabilities and mental health issues, and the way that the arts can create an inclusive environment where everyone has a gift and things aren't token. I'm also passionate about the work that is made on the ground and the integrity of the process, that it has an audience that is also beyond the community, that the work is valued both in its process, but both in what and who sees it. And I'm behind my slideshow. So this is in Tasmania. I was excited to hear in the keynote speech that commitment and resilience should be looked at and be reframed in a positive way. We talk about resilience, but is it really about survival? I've been driven by an earnest belief that you can change the world even in small ways through art. So things like doing 48-hour editing sessions, only drinking Diet Coke and finger buns, and committing yourself fully and wholly 24 hours a day to make exquisite art with a process of integrity can sometimes be draining. I also have a tendency for martyrdom. Interestingly though, when I began, it was my bosses and colleagues that showed me those skills. They too were committed and passionate and therefore didn't stop. Often there is not enough funding, and often we wish to ensure integrity of process and quality of work, and often, we'll volunteer above and beyond. What results can be burnout, exhaustion, having no life, no money, and a sense of becoming marginalised whilst working with people who are marginalised. I've experienced all of those things, And it was quite timely that I received the Kirk Robson Award this year, because it was probably at a point where I was thinking of moving on. As I also turned 30 this year, which was a big milestone, and as school friends discussed on Skype their mortgages and pay rises, I spent 6 months unemployed working voluntarily in a community arts project, because keeping the balls up in the air of acquitting the previous grant, having the funding coming in for the next one, and doing and being present in the moment of the project we're doing didn't happen, and we ended up with a funding gap. Needless to say, that whole process didn't make me feel valued, whilst receiving the Kirk Robson Award did. It was an important moment and allowed me the space to reflect on my commitment and passion to this work, and not just to draw a line in the sand and go, I'm exhausted. I'm interested also in the fact that we're all women on this panel, and that the Kirk Robson Award does appear to be a lot of young female leaders. As people who know me, I love to do some broad generalisations about gender, and I'm going to try and avoid doing those. Except maybe that every time I collaborate with a male artist, it's always assumed that he's the charged and I'm just helping him out. Or why do women get called bossy whilst men are leaders? I don't know. Maybe that's my issue. Anyway, I'll move along from that. I've spent the last 2 years working on a young men's project with Tel and Rodwell on the northwest coast of Tasmania called Drive. That's been a really interesting process, as I've been working with a lot of young men that I probably was terrified of at school. It's been a really interesting process as well in terms of my place within that. And it was interesting that the people that facilitated the storytelling, which was quite a delicate process of talking about young men who had died, were the women. It was the mothers, it was the girlfriends, and it was the sisters who were the ones that talked to the young men, to the brothers, to the mates, to the fathers, who brought them into the project and facilitated that storytelling. I found that a really interesting, I'm going to jump forward, a really interesting thing, and maybe that is a skill that is already naturally happening within our communities at the grassroots level, that women are already facilitating the storytelling, and perhaps it's natural that within this area it's women that are leading it. I also, we also know that when women leave education, they'll be undervalued in the workforce, both in earnings and seniority. And it's interesting to note, whilst there's a lot of young women who receive the Kirk Robson Award, the Ros Bower is often received by older men. It's also interesting that within the more mainstream sort of pursuits as a filmmaker, I'm doing a master's at film school, and it is all men. There's been an outcry this year about the lack of female directors on the Sydney theatre scene as well. I've always been supported by female colleagues and leaders, the Michelle Katevskis, the Elizabeth Walshes, the Sue Giles, and I've always felt nurtured and valued in this sector. Perhaps perhaps, I don't know whether we can change the value of the sector of its whole as how it is viewed within the arts. I've turned 30 and I've gotten a proper adult job, but not really. I've just started to work on a project called ABC Open, which is an interesting shift as well in the 10 years that I've been doing work, to see the national broadcaster wanting to engage in stories from regional areas and in people making their own stories and participating in the telling of their stories. I think this is an exciting opportunity, and it's an exciting chance to see the shifts of the valuing of this sort of arts and telling of stories. I'm also very excited to have a steady income, to know what I'm doing in the next couple of months, and to feel valued within a workplace. So the Kirk Robson allowed me transition time, really, to not opt out and leave the making of these stories, but to reflect and to move forward. And so I'm very grateful for that, and I wish to thank the Australia Council also for enabling me to attend this conference.